going on, you guys? Welcome back. Due to the overwhelming positive response from my last video on throttle control using rewinds, I've decided to make this into more of a series. But today what I've got for you is a drill that you can work on that's really easy, that'll improve your yaw control. So if you're struggling with your yaw spins, maybe they're wobbling a bit, maybe you're ending up pointed up too high or too low, this should help you out. Now the simplest type of yaw spin is where your drone is just straight and level like this, and you spin around the yaw axis. And those yaw spins are pretty easy, right? It just takes a little bit of practice to get a feel for it. But when yaw spins become a lot more difficult is when you have any sort of motion involved. So maybe you're going forward, maybe you're going backward, or whatever direction you're going, that makes it a whole lot harder. And that is mainly due to the camera angle. I get asked pretty often what my camera angle is, and I personally use around 25 degrees. And to the newer people out there, don't stress too much about the camera angle, because if you understand the motion of the quad and what it's doing and how your movements on the sticks affect the quad, camera angle doesn't really matter. Pretty much all it does is make you fly faster or slower. Yes, there are certain tricks that are a little bit easier with different camera angles, but if you understand what you're doing, you can do those tricks with pretty much any angle. So that being said, especially if you're newer, pick an angle and stick with it. The only time that you should really be changing that angle is if you have a specific reason for it. So for example, if you're doing like indoor one takes or something like that, you don't want to go with a 30 degree because that'll fly way too fast. You want to go with something a little bit lower to keep it slow. And conversely, if you're racing, you do want something a bit higher because you're going to be going a lot faster. But my overall point that I can't stress enough, especially to beginners, don't keep tinkering with your camera angle. Set it and forget it. Well, I'm gonna suffer for you guys and not wear my strap because it interferes with the GoPro, and I want you guys to see the inputs on my sticks. I got a little meter on the bottom right of my screen there in the transmitter. I want you guys to see that. The first drill we're gonna do is just stationary yaw spins. And like I said before, this is meant to just get a feel for where your camera angle is when you're actually in the goggles. So go out to an open field just like this. Make sure nobody's around. Got a bunch of people driving through my area. It's pretty annoying. But just find an area like this and get yourself in a hover so you're not, drifting too much. And the main thing you want is just the neutral camera angle. So this looks about right for me. And just practice your spinning and just see what happens to the drone. Right, so that looks pretty good. It looks pretty locked in. And just get a feel for that. If you are too low like that, you will find that you'll start drifting when you start doing yaw spin. And same thing if you're too high, right? So if you start like this and do a spin, you get that wobbling just like before. And the whole point of this is just to get a feel for what that camera angle looks like and what kind of angle and orientation you need to be at so you don't get that wobbling. And this really comes in handy when you're doing just normal yaw spins in a freestyle line. It's like a home base, if you will. You know that if you park the drone in this-ish orientation and you give it yaw, you'll get a nice flat yaw spin. So when you're doing a freestyle line, that's really nice to know. You can just keep that kind of in your back pocket and just know that to get that flat yaw spin, you need to park it in this orientation, and that'll work every time. So practice that a little bit, just get a feel for it. And again, this is why you don't go tinkering with your camera angle a bunch. Just keep it kind of the same. Don't mess with it. All right, and the next level here is quite a bit more challenging, and this is what a lot of people struggle with, myself included. It's doing a yaw spin, keeping the horizon locked when you're in motion. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. Start back over here. All right, so say I want to go forward. So I got some forward motion. Let's lock the horizon. If I give it yaw, see how it drifts up to the left there? Let's try it again, the other direction. So lock that horizon, yaw right, and now I'm drifting up to the right. And, all of you pretty much know this just by nature and by, trying this a few times in the simulator or whatever. But it's very challenging to actually get a flat yaw spin when you're in motion. So the drill I've got for you to work on this specifically is just to practice going straight forward and doing a yaw spin, keeping the horizon locked. So let's try it out. Let's go up a little bit higher so we don't crash. Go forward, lock that horizon, and just yaw and correct with the roll stick and maybe the pitch stick if you need to try to keep that horizon locked. So hopefully you can see the little outputs thing on my radio. And I have that to show how minute the adjustments you need to make really are. Now for me, I'm using a 25-degree angle, so the adjustments aren't that big on roll. But the higher your angle, the bigger your roll adjustment's going to be. So just keep that in mind. And likewise, the more angled you're flying, so like if I do this, if I'm pointed way down there and I try to yaw, I need a much bigger input. So keep this in mind because it's really challenging to get a good looking one of these. Now you might even have to play with the throttle because, as I'm sure you guys have realized, sometimes when you're yawing, that changes the power output of some of the motors to make a torque in one direction or the other. And when it does that, your amount of lift changes, right? The amount of thrust your motors are putting out in the upwards direction changes. So you might notice a climb or drop in altitude. So be aware of that and try to compensate for it. There I drifted too high, so I got to get a little bit lower on the throttle. Try it again. That was a pretty good one. So just practice this a few times, and you can really grind these tricks. You can do a bunch of these on one battery. I've been going for 6 minutes now. Same battery. I'm just getting some reps in. And the more comfortable you get, the faster you can start going, and the lower to the ground you can start going. And what I like doing is finding a tree with a little bit of an opening at the bottom. So let's try to find one here. Maybe this tree right in front of me. So I like to practice just yawing through that gap. And because there's that layer of branches, it really forces you to control your throttle a little bit more. Those of you that have watched my throttle control video recognize that trick. I like using those layers of tree branches quite a bit in my practice. I really think it helps improve your control in general. So when you're feeling comfortable enough, just find some gaps and practice yaw spins through them, making sure not to drift into anything else, of course. And if you're not quite comfortable doing the locked horizon thing, you can always just revert back to your camera angle straight yaw, like that. That was a bad one, but that is why you practice that first step of knowing where that neutral point is, because you can break it out at any time. If you're not comfortable locking the horizon, don't bother. Just point it up to your neutral spot and just give it straight yaw. It won't look as cool, but you'll at least be able to do a yaw spin. I hope it makes sense when I say that you can keep that neutral camera angle position kind of in your back pocket. I hope that makes sense to you guys. Really, the basis of this whole thing is to master something really fundamental, really basic, and just build upon that. So in this case, it's just getting a feel for how that 25 degrees or the 30 degrees or whatever your angle is, how that actually feels in the goggles. And once you've got that down, you can really start adding yaw spins into your routine a little bit easier because you know that neutral spot that you can always return to if you're not comfortable doing the horizon lock method instead. All right, you guys, well, that's gonna do it for this trick tutorial video. Stay tuned for more videos in this series. I really think there's a lot of good drills that you can use to really build upon your skills one at a time in a nice bite-sized segment. So try this out, especially if you're a little bit newer to the hobby and maybe you're struggling to get the feeling of that yaw stick down. And let me know how it works. Something that works for me might not work for you, and something that works for you might not work for me. So just let me know in the comments. I am curious if this helps you guys. I really hope it does. But until next time, thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like down below. Feel free to leave me a comment, as I just said, and please hit subscribe if you haven't. Keep ripping, keep wrecking, and keep learning. Peace.